Alright, what you're about to hear is a recording that I took off the TV and off a video that I will link in this video. Okay? So, here we go. Ready? Voila. Talking about North Korea. Fox News. Not much time left for peaceful solution in North Korea. And here is what's on TV. Alright, we're going to see if you can hear it.
Deliver a warhead to the United States. National Security Advisor H.R. McMaster did warn today. He said the greatest national security threat to the United States right now is North Korea. But one of the most surprising moments of the conference came just moments ago when CIA Director Pompeo said that he had sent a letter recently to Iran's head of its Quds Force, Qasem Soleimani, who was in Iraq at the time. He was concerned that the Quds Force, the Iranians, might try to attack U.S. forces on the ground in Iraq and Syria. He warned them against it, but he said that Qasem Soleimani did not open that letter. But what it shows is that with all eyes on North Korea, there still is a possibility for a regional flare-up with Iran in the Middle East.
Regional flare-up.
Another big theme at the conference, something that you've reported on pretty extensively, readiness problems. Planes that can't fly, budget shortfalls. What did you hear there today regarding that?
Well, that's right, Molly. We've reported a lot on how half of the Navy's fighter planes can't fly. Half of the Air Force's B-1 bombers, their strategic bombers, can't fly. I asked the Secretary of the Air Force, Heather Wilson, how it would impact a fight with North Korea. She said, in no uncertain terms, that if we had to fight right now under these current readiness conditions, that fewer airmen would come home. Airmen, she said, would in fact die. Here's when I asked the Marine Commandant General Robert Neller about this, here's what he said. Do you agree with General McMaster that North Korea is the greatest threat right now, national security threat?
I think because of their provocations and the things that they're doing, that the potential for war on the peninsula is probably as high as it's ever been. If somebody made a miscalculation, do I think that Kim Jong-un is a foolish, irrational actor? I do not.
A lot of talk today about readiness, as we mentioned, and the Budget Control Act, that sequestration that Congress needs to repeal, so that the money that's been that they're considering for defense increases, to increase to rebuild the military,
So in other words, we ain't got the numbers.
to fix this readiness problem. That relies on
We have a
Congress
lot of our
getting rid
flyers
of the
down.
sequestration. There's been a lot of talk of that here today, Molly.
Yeah,
Back
that's
to you.
the big question. If
fighters,
action will be
our
taken.
planes,
Jennifer Griffin, thank you.
our missiles.
And don't miss Fox News Sunday tomorrow. H.R. McMaster will sit down with Chris Wallace on the heels of the Reagan National Defense Forum.
Alright, so that's where we're at, people. Now, I'll show you something else where we at. Alright, let me see if I can find it. Okay. God. Let's see. Alright, right now we're in a commercial, so we're going to have to wait a minute.
About the SLAPP Act, how is this supposed to be implemented?
Well, I'll tell you what. If you have these sanctuary cities need to end, and if that they harbor legal criminals, and if these politicians don't obey a valid, constitutionally upheld federal law, if they're going to act like criminals themselves, then we ought to lock them up.
So, Congressman, if you look at the Kate Steinle case, where this guy he had 7 felonies, he was deported 5 times, he had an ICE waiver out for him, and yet the San Francisco sheriff released him 2 months before he killed Kate Steinle. Who would you wind up suing in that case?
Well, it's a matter of criminal charges under the
not
SLAPP
the
Act.
president.
If you fail to abide by a federal custody order, then that's a violation of federal law, and you can be, it's a felony. Under the
Would you
SLAPP
be
Act, it would
going
be a
after the
felony.
mayor of San Francisco or the sheriff of San
Yep,
Francisco?
both of
Well,
them.
any elected official who would be liable, so who
who ignored the federal order. I mean, that's what we're going after, and it's a felony. You know,
Yep.
5 years imprisonment, up to $1 million of fines. You know, if they're going to act like criminals themselves, if they're going to put the interests of these illegal immigrant criminals above the safety of their own citizens, then we ought to lock them up.
So, Congressman, the thing that got us to this point is because no one's following the law. So
Right.
the sanctuary cities are illegal. Number one, you should not be letting
Violators
people here
face $1
stay
million
illegally. Number
in
one. So
fines and 5
the
years
new
in
attorney
prison.
general says, if you guys don't do this, if you don't start implementing immigration laws, I'm going to stop giving you federal funds.
That's
and
right.
the judges stood up and said to the judge, in many cases, said, hey, you know what? You can't do that, Attorney General Sessions.
Yep.
So therefore, you have to step up with the SLAPP Act. What kind of support have you gotten?
Well, we got some great support. You know, this bill was just dropped Friday. I expect to get some good support this week in Congress. We need co-sponsors. In fact, just walking over here, Scott Perry, my good friend from Pennsylvania, said he'd support it. So as members are learning about it, it's picking up steam. And just like everything, if your viewers need to call in, you can call in and show that if they support this, this is what President Trump needs, and the Attorney General Session needs to enforce the law. That would be great. It's H.R. 4526.
Okay, H.R. 4526,
support the
that's House
SLAPP Act.
resolution. What
Well,
about
I
over in the
would.
Senate? Because if you guys pass it, it's going to go to the Senate. Do you
Right.
have any support there yet?
Well, I hope to get a companion bill. We're starting to talk with senators right now on that. But it's one of the reasons I'm running for Senate out of Indiana is because of what's not getting done over in the Senate.
right.
We really need to change that. We saw the power of a Senate
We
vote
need a
very
whole
terrible
lot
way
done
with the
here.
healthcare bill. We continue to see how hard it is to get things done. We can change those things.
So, by the way, Senator Joe Donnelly is one of the people the president was told to target because he's so-called moderate. That's the seat you'll be running for. Is he a moderate?
He votes with Bernie
Sanctuary
Sanders
city
80% of the time.
About damn time.
Enough said. So that you think that represents people of Indiana?
Absolutely not. You know, and that's why he's got to go. Joe must go, and we're going to get the job done.
All right. Well, we got to go too. Congressman Todd Rokita, Republican from Indiana. Sir, thank you very much.
Thank
Hang
you.
on a minute. Alrighty then. Well, maybe that SOB will get his just reward after they crack down on these sanctuary cities. So there you go. Anyway, let's see what else I can find. Hang on 1 minute, I gotta find it.
And still can find no peace. And now I hear that ISIS are going to deport this guy. It's too late. Here's what my problem is with them deporting the guy now. I like Jeff Sessions' idea, charge him federally, maybe rack up 10, 15, 20 years where he can sit in a prison. Because if they deport him right now, he will be right back in the country because our border is not sealed. For
That's
heaven's
right.
sakes, seal the damn border.
Amen.
Yeah, seal the border, build the wall, follow the law. These are the problems that we're having, and California is really just a pitiful example
Yep.
of how bad this problem has gotten. And we were speaking earlier in the program about elections coming up. We heard from Jeff Sessions earlier on Tucker's program. Sean saying sanctuary cities to blame for the death of Kate Steinle. But now we have a president with the will and wherewithal, and I'm sure you've had conversations with him, Sheriff, about this issue.
Precisely. And push is going to have to come to shove for the United States Department of Justice. Look, there are federal laws that are being violated by sanctuary cities, catch and release policies. And the Justice Department is going to have to develop the teeth, put some teeth into their rhetoric, and
Right.
charge these officials, charge these mayors, charge these law enforcement officials that are going to defy federal law. Sanctuary cities are illegal, we know it. And all we see is the back and forth, the threatening of pulling funding, and then you get some activist judge who gets in the way, and he delays that and says that they cannot do it because Congress has already approved the funding, but they didn't do that when President Obama threatened to pull funding from schools from not having allowing men to use women's bathrooms. So at some point, the Justice Department, Jeff Sessions, is going to have to charge one of these individuals. Forget about the funding stuff, all right? Charge
Right.
one of them criminally. One of these statutes can end up in a person upon conviction serving 10 years in a federal prison.
Right.
Some public official is going to have to be charged and prosecuted to get the attention of everybody
Right.
else. But until then, the Congress, as I said, they don't have the will, Kimberly. They do not have the will to fix this broken immigration system because both sides are using it for political leverage.
No, you're
Right.
absolutely right. Greg Jarrett was on earlier. He, concurs, feels the same way as an attorney that, the laws there, somebody's going to need to be prosecuted and be held accountable to actually stop the flow of blood coming from these criminal recidivists who keep coming in, are deported, come back in again, commit more crimes, and no one seems to matter. It's almost like you got to give these people an apology. Oh, I'm sorry, we have to prosecute you, or we can't let you come back in and forth to commit more crimes against innocent, law-abiding people. I mean, when you look at this picture of what happened here, and you see this guy, honestly, I cannot believe that San Francisco did this. As bad as some of the things they've done in the past, how did this guy, a felon in possession of a gun, not be convicted of anything? I mean, it's unbelievable.
That's right.
The thing that's most disgusting to me is that this illegal alien had more rights than Kate Steinle.
Yeah.
And Kate
He's
Steinle's
going to
family.
get credit time served or something.
That's the
Exactly.
thing that chaps my rear end. It really does. That an illegal alien has more rights than a United States citizen. But again, look, Congress, all they do is pay lip service. Now there's this funding for the wall that's tied up in, they hide it in other bills.
Right.
And then Chuck Schumer comes along and threatens to shut down the government if that's included in a bill. And then the GOP backs off. Look, it is high time in this country. The American people have spoken. They spoke last November and they continue to speak. They want this illegal immigration crisis fixed. They want it solved. We are a sovereign nation.
Yep.
If you're going to be a sovereign nation, you have to have borders, and you have to protect those borders. That's what we expect our federal officials to do.
Right.
Isn't that the bare minimum we can do in terms of a basic decency, a basic expectation of public safety, that we can protect people, an innocent girl and her father walking down the street to not be slaughtered?
Well,
Right.
you've seen some of the victims there. Some law enforcement officers have been killed by people illegally in the country. Other citizens, have been victimized as well. And when the United States federal government cannot protect its citizens from an illegal invasion, and that's what they is, they're allowing people to come into the country illegally and set up residency. And then when they kick them out, they come back over. They kick them out. They continue to come back over. This is a cat and mouse game by these illegal aliens. They know it. They know that there's little that will happen to them, especially if they hide out in a sanctuary city where they're provided a safe haven.
Unbelievable. It's really outrageous, and it seems to be getting worse, but I have faith that the president is going to do something about it, and we're waiting on Jeff Sessions to do it as well. Sheriff Clark, always a pleasure. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
That's the criticism, Larry. They're saying, look, this is a party of hypocrisy, that they claim to hold this banner high above their heads, looking.
All right. Let me see what I can see what's going on.
Born without fathers in the home. 25% of kids were born out. Black kids were born outside of wedlock 50 years ago when Conyers first came to Congress, and now about 73% of black kids are born outside of wedlock. They don't want vouchers. They want to jack up the minimum wage. That hurts minorities and women who are working part-time, often on minimum wage. They don't even want to think about privatizing Social Security, which a study has shown would disproportionately benefit black workers because they die earlier. So all these policies have hurt black people. Under Obama, for 8 years, the black poverty rate got worse. The wealth gap between the average white household and black household widened. The labor force participation rate for black men got worse. Their policies of tax, spend, and regulation have not worked, and they've disproportionately hurt the very people that they claim they care about, women and minorities.
Alrighty then, and that's the way that goes. Now, hold up. Don't give up on me yet. Hold up for just a minute. Let's see, it's 14 to 17, I think is what it is. Video says on here, and then I'll run the link in the post.
Little rocket man, rocket fuel for the American economy. He is a sick puppy.
That from Missouri yesterday, President Trump taking aim at the North Korean leader only hours after threatening new sanctions on Pyongyang for this latest missile launch. That video released only hours ago. Admiral Robert Nanas, retired U.S. Navy four-star admiral and a former 7th Fleet commander. And sir, good morning to you from Jacksonville, Florida, and thank you for coming back.
Good morning, Bill.
Where are we headed, sir?
Well, there's no
Oh,
doubt
Lord.
that I agree with Ambassador Haley. We're closer to war now than we were a year ago with North Korea, but we're not ready for military action by a long stretch.
Yep.
We have a responsibility as a nation to exhaust every means of trying to negotiate, work with China and others to put pressure on North Korea to stop this insanity.
Do you get the sense, though, that we're bumping into a wall here?
It doesn't look good right now. Kim Jong-un is not responding to the kind of pressure that he should respond to.
Nikki Haley, you mentioned her late yesterday afternoon. Strong words of the UN, including the following, directed toward the Chinese.
We have come to the point that China must cut off the oil from North Korea. That would be a pivotal step in the world's effort to stop this international pariah. China can do this on its own, or we can take the oil situation into our own hands.
What do you think of that, sir?
Well, I think that's the right solution. We've got to keep the money and the resources out of North Korea so that they can't continue to put it toward their military and their leadership. You can bet your bottom dollar it's not going to the people out in the countryside.
Why, if Beijing was willing to help, would there even be oil sales today? Well, why would this even be an issue now?
Well, I think the second order effects of doing it impact China directly, especially the Chinese who live along the border with North Korea. So they're concerned about that. And they're worried about the stability in North Korea generally. So they've got some real concerns here. But they can do more. They have done more in the past.
The president said this on Twitter. The Chinese envoy who just returned from North Korea, he writes, seems to have had no impact on Little Rocket Man. Hard to believe his people and the military put up with living in such horrible conditions. And he concludes, Russia and China condemn the launch. Are they working against us, do you think so?
Yep.
I don't think they're working against us, but I don't think that they're to the point where it's in their best interests to be as strong in this as we are being. And I think we need to share with them some of the ramifications of the war in North Korea and how it might impact Russia and especially China.
You would think some of that had an impact already. The Hwasong 15 was the ICBM launch the other day, right? And the North Koreans bragged about its greatest ICBM. It traveled to an altitude, a height of 2,700 miles. It traveled just west of Japan for almost a distance of 600 miles. What does that tell you about their capability?
We're fucked.
Well, they're achieving the capability that they set out to achieve 10, 15 years ago. And under Kim Jong-un, he's accelerated that effort. He's throwing everything he's got at the technology challenges.
You need to look at the map.
What worries me is when they do one of these test firings and it goes amok and lands in Japan or in the United States, we just can't stand for that because we don't know what's in that warhead, whether it's telemetry or whether it's a nuclear warhead.
Why do you think he went quiet for almost 3 months?
I think he may have been under some pressure from the Chinese, quite frankly. And I think he sat down with the envoy from China and decided that he wanted to go forward.
Sir, thank you for your time, and we await possibly another test. Hopefully I'm wrong.
Oh,
thank
Lord,
you, sir. Admiral Narrowband out of Jacksonville. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Bill.
I hate to put a scare into you, but well, there it is, and right out of the horse's mouth. We're not looking good, guys. Not one friggin' bit. And I hate to tell you, but now's the time to figure out what we're gonna do. You look at the map of where that sucker can hit and what it can do. I'm telling you, it's not good. Not good at all. I think Armageddon has hit within the next few months, not years. Maybe not even months. It might be weeks. It could be days. Who knows? But just Might as well put your head between your legs and kiss your ass goodbye is all I can say, because one way or another, if this don't happen, it'd be a godsend and a miracle. So, from me to you, I'm trying to give you the news. I'm trying to give you some reality. I'm trying to give you some outlet here, of what to do, where to go, how to face this, besides just sitting there going, well, it ain't going to happen, because it's going to happen. I hate to say it, but it's all over the news. So, that's what I got to say about it. I'm done, out of here, and I'll holler at you later. Bye. Well, there's that one that I've recorded. And as you can see, I'm doing my puzzle. And now I'm going to run let me see. Let me go this way first. Then I'm going to run, let me see. I think that's the one we just seen. Let me see if that's it. Yeah.
Little rocket man, rocket fuel for the American economy. He is a sick puppy.
That from Missouri yesterday, President Trump taking aim at the North Korean leader only hours after threatening new sanctions on Pyongyang for this latest missile launch. That video released only hours ago. Admiral Robert Natters, retired U.S. Navy four-star admiral and a former 7th Fleet commander. And sir, good morning to you from Jacksonville, Florida, and thank you for coming back.
Good morning, Bill.
Where are we headed, sir?
Well, there's no doubt that I agree with Ambassador Haley. We're closer to war now than we were a year ago with North Korea, but we're not ready for military action by a long stretch. We have a responsibility as a nation to exhaust every means of trying to negotiate, work with China and others to put pressure on North Korea to stop this insanity.
Do you get the sense, though, that we're bumping into a wall here?
It doesn't look good right now. Kim Jong-un is not responding to the kind of pressure that he should respond to.
No. Nikki Haley, you mentioned her late yesterday afternoon. Strong words of the UN, including the following, directed toward the Chinese.
We have come to the point that China must cut off the oil from North Korea. That would be a pivotal step in the world's effort to stop this international pariah. China can do this on its own, or we can take the oil situation into our own hands.
What do you think of that, sir?
Well, I think that's the right solution. We've got to keep the money and the resources out of North Korea so that they can't continue to put it toward their military and their leadership. You can bet your bottom dollar it's not going to the people out in the countryside.
Yeah. Why, if Beijing was willing to help, would there even be oil sales today? Well, why would this even be an issue now?
Well, I think the second-order effects of doing it impact China directly, especially the Chinese who live along the border with North Korea. So they're concerned about that, and they're worried about the stability in North Korea generally. So they've got some real concerns here, but they can do more. They have done more in the past.
President said this on Twitter. The Chinese envoy who just returned from North Korea, he writes, seems to have had no impact on Little Rocket Man. Hard to believe his people and the military put up with living in such horrible conditions. And he concludes, Russia and China condemn the launch. Are they working against us, do you think, sir?
I don't think they're working against us, but I don't think that they're to the point where it's in their best interests to be as strong in this as we are being. And I think we need to share with them some of the ramifications of a war in North Korea and how it might impact Russia and especially China.
You would think some of that had an impact already. The Hwasong 15 was the ICBM launch the other day, right? And the North Koreans bragged about its greatest ICBM. It traveled to an altitude, a height of 2,700 miles. It traveled just west of Japan for almost a distance of 600 miles. What does that tell you about their capability now, Admiral?
Well, they're achieving the capability that they set out to achieve 10, 15 years ago. And under Kim Jong-un, he's accelerated that effort. He's throwing everything he's got at the technology challenges. What worries me is when they do what...
Look at the map right there, okay? You can't get no clearer picture than that. You got it. Anchorage, Alaska, New York, and I'm right here in between Chicago and New York. And then you got Washington, D.C. right there, all three of them, bam. Then you got L.A. Then you got Guam. I mean, how clear is that? He could hit either all of them or one, or... Telling you people, this is not good, no matter how you slice the cake. Just not good at all. It just scares the living daylights out of me. So, there it is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them. Either way or all of them, right there. So, now you see why I say put your head between your legs and kiss your ass goodbye. I mean, you know, it just, whatever, if it hits LA, whatever he fires, it can go right on out. And whatever hits in those 3 areas is going to contaminate all that. It's just horrifying. Now listen to what else they had to say.
One of these test firings and it goes amok and lands in Japan or in the United States, we just can't stand for that because we don't know what's in that warhead, whether it's telemetry or whether it's a nuclear warhead.
Yep.
Why do you think he went quiet for almost 3 months?
I think he may have been under some pressure from the Chinese, quite frankly. And I think he sat down with the envoy from China and decided that he wanted to go forward.
Yep, look at there. Latest missile gains, November 29th, just the other day. 2,800 miles in 53 minutes, an hour. And that's the newest one, right there. Then you got July 4th, 1,700 miles, 2,300 miles. Look at the numbers, guys. Come on. You can't tell me you don't see this. God bless America. Oh, this just scares the crap out of me. Oh, Lord. Ain't got a penny to a friggin' name, and now this. Ain't got a fallout shelter. Ain't got nowhere to hide. Ow.
Sir, thank you for your time, and we await possibly another test. Hopefully I'm wrong. Thank you, sir. Admiral Matter there out of Jacksonville. Thank you for your time.
Yep. Thank you for your time, exactly. Because we sure ain't got a whole lot of it. Alright, here you go. Well, that's Alex Jones. I ain't into him. This is major stuff. Major stuff. Let's see what this one is. That ain't but 5 minutes.
North Korea's missile program is racing ahead.
Mr. President, will you attack North Korea?
And U.S. President Donald Trump is using language that we've never heard a president using on Korea.
Fire and fury.
And that's led to open talk about military options on the Korean Peninsula, something that you generally don't hear very often.
We have many military options, and the president wanted to be briefed on each one of them.
A war would put the lives of millions of civilians at risk, so it's still an extremely unlikely scenario.
Look at that.
But if it were to happen, here's how experts see it playing out. What could trigger a military intervention?
Experts say the US could take action to stop Pyongyang from developing a nuclear-tipped missile capable of reaching New York or Washington. Say the US could take action to stop Pyongyang from developing a nuclear-tipped missile capable of reaching New York or Washington. The US has also warned North Korea that it could take military action if North Korea were to engage in a particularly provocative fashion.
Any threat to the United States or its territories, including Guam or our allies, will be met with a massive military response.
Analysts say that Pyongyang is highly unlikely to start a conflict unless it believes that the US is about to strike and that the regime itself is under threat. In times of high stress, even a mishap could become a trigger, like a North Korean missile test that inadvertently lands onto Japanese soil, or a disaster like an accident at North Korea's nuclear reactor. So what would a US military operation look like? Washington could try to take Kim Jong-un's regime by surprise and conduct a short, intense military campaign.
What happened is a massive American air campaign. That was the plan in 1994 for the beginning of the North Korean nuclear program. So I have the feeling that the Americans would target a lot of North Korean facilities in a big, big strike.
American military could rely on forces already in the region in order to avoid tipping off North Korea, such as using aerial bombers, land-based cruise missiles, and submarine-launched ballistic missiles.
Through surgical strikes, the US Army would destroy Pyongyang's nuclear facilities, missile launch sites, and mobile launch vehicles. But there's a catch. The US may not know where all of the North's nuclear assets and its missile facilities are.
Yep.
Wars are never as simple as they may seem at first.
One thing I will not allow is a nation such as Iraq.
And as history shows, it's highly unlikely that the US could avoid a more strenuous confrontation.
Once military action is taken, it is hard to predict the exact consequences.
If Pyongyang judges that the regime itself is under direct threat, they may respond in even more aggressive ways.
It could mobilize its conventional weapons near the demilitarized zone to attack US and South Korean military forces in the region, as well as Seoul and its surroundings, a metropolitan area of 25 million. North Korea could also use its vast network of secret tunnels to move troops around the country and perhaps even send soldiers to the south. But analysts say these strategies would expose the North Korean army to counterattacks. The regime could even turn to weapons of mass destruction. That includes banned chemical weapons such as sarin and VX gas. However, intelligence analysts at Stratfor say that only 1% of North Korea's likely stockpile of chemical weapons could be deployed immediately, since North Korea doesn't have enough warheads. And then there are the nuclear weapons. That's the most catastrophic scenario.
They could potentially target U.S. facilities, again, in places like Guam and in places like Japan with the nuclear weapons.
Dropping a nuclear bomb on Seoul would put North Korea's own existence at stake.
You could just drop them on large civilian agglomerations like Seoul and kill 1 million people. That's really risky, though, because once you start doing that, then the whole world turns against you.
The tragedy of war is well enough known. It doesn't need another characterization beyond the fact that it would be catastrophic.
For more than 6 decades following the Korean War, a potential conflict with North Korea was thought to be too dangerous and devastating for all parties. Analysts project the death toll could run into the hundreds of thousands or even millions.
There is no military operation that could be conceived that does not include large numbers of casualties in South Korea.
대륙간 탄도 로켓 장착용 수소탄 시험에서 완전 성공.
With Donald Trump and Kim Jong-un exchanging heated rhetoric, the situation on the Korean Peninsula has arguably never been this unpredictable. There's a real chance that the rhetoric could turn into action.
Well, there you go. Right there. Right there. If you didn't get the hint, I don't know what to tell you. What more do you want? I mean, it's in black and white and color and all that good stuff, as real can get. So, with all that said, 35 minutes into the video. I think that's pretty much all I can say. God bless us all is all I got to say. Talk to you on the other side. Thank you. Bye.